Hello Elite members, welcome to another roster review. Before we start, I'd like to say you can use the link below to submit your lists. Come on guys, get those lists in. I'm eager to see what you guys are using and what I can evaluate on here. Right, today we've got AdMech. You know, they're the new release. They're coming out this week. No, they're coming out this week. Or did they just come out this week? They just came out this week. And they're awesome. We've got our hands on the book. David has been using the AdMech. You know, this is a list that he put together from the stuff that we had painted. He's picked the best things, the things that he likes the most, and he's put them together. And the synergy is really good, actually. I played against this with my Drakari, and I was really surprised at what you can fit in and what they do and how well they synergize with each other. It's really, really good. Right then, step one. Let's go through the list for you. So, to start off, there is a Mars Supreme Command detachment, and that has Belisarius Call in there. I know David's not that fond of him. He's pretty good, and he hits hard, and he doesn't die. But I think David's going to want to change him out for something else that I think he was saying anyway. Right, so he is the Warlord because he's Supreme Commander, and he's got the Masterwork Bionics Warlord trait. That means he's got a 4-up invulnerable, and he halves all damage. Just peep that, guys. He's got Toughness 6... with 8 wounds, a 2-up save, a 4-up invulnerable, and he minuses 1 from damage that he takes. That's really good. Really, really bloody good. Then you have a Mars Patrol detachment. Now in there is a Tech Priest Engineer, a unit of 5 Cataphron Destroyers with Plasma. Then you've got a unit of 3 Cataphon Breachers with their normal arc rifle. It's really quite good, actually. Hurts vehicles a lot. And then you've got a unit of 5 Skitarii Rangers, just to play the mission with. And, of course, on top of that, he's got 2 units of Cerberus Raiders. Look how cool they look, man. Then just look how cool they look. He's got 2 units of 3 Cerberus Raiders in that detachment, and an Archaeopter Fusilier to drop some bombs. Then after that, there is a Lucius Patrol detachment. And I know this is the secret source. I don't know fully what it does, but David will be explaining what it does. Now, I know the Lucius Patrol is what he likes the most. In there is a Tech Priest Engineer, who is a Magi. And on top of that, he has the Luminescent Blessing Warlord trait, where he can choose a core unit within 9 inches, and he can give them transhuman, essentially. You can only wound them on 4+, which is amazing. And he also has the Solar Flare Relic, where you can pick up a core unit within 3 and redeploy them anywhere on the battlefield. Now, that's really powerful, because I know that these Iron Strider Ballistari with all their autocannons are core. Then you've got 3 units of Skitarii Rangers, 3 units of 5 Skitarii Rangers, so he's playing the mission really well, as you can see now. Then on top of that, there is a unit of 8 Corpuscari Electro Priests, which are incredible. They clear out chaff, but they also hit big stuff just because of the volume of shots they got. And there is a Scorpius Dune Rider for them to go in. Then there is a unit of 5 Sicarian Infiltrators with their mini Uzis. They look super cool. Another unit of 3 Cerberus Raiders, which are the Horsemen again. Of course, there is a unit of 6 Iron Strider Ballistari. Now, these, I think, are probably the best units in the Codex. They hit super hard, and with this transhuman and stuff that David's been using, they're uber hard to shift as well, on top of being that hard, on top of being that good at shooting with their damage output. And the final thing in the army is an Archaeopter Stratoraptor, the one with all the las cannons on it. So David's using one of each plane, which I think is really nice. Gives him a lot of options. He's got a bomber and a las cannon plane. And overall, I think the list is really good. But just because I don't know it as in-depth as David does, I'm going to hand you over to David now, and he's going to explain how it all works.
So now that you've seen the list, I'll tell you how it works. It's deceptively tricksy. It's a massive gun line, with all the units that can deal long-range damage. But that's not its main strength, I think. The main strength is with how many options it has to play the game. I can literally just sit back and shoot at the opponent and a lot of damage and then play my mission on the side. Or I can send out little MSU units to deny objectives. And I can also clear chaff very well. So I can teleport around the table. I'll tell you how. Basically, the key to the army is Lucius. Lucius allows me to teleport around the table like Veil of Darkness. It's called Solar Flare. So you take that as a relic on one of your characters, and he can pick up any core Skitari unit. And it just so happens that Iron Striders are core. So the big problem with that I have is how to gain angles, because people will play around you. So to counter that, you just deploy them on one of the sides, so your opponent has to skew to the other side, and that opens an opportunity for you to just teleport to a line of sight that he didn't expect or he just cannot avoid, and killing very key units. On top of that, the range is 48 inches, so you don't have to get very close and personal. You can just literally redeploy them in your at the end of your movement phase, and he goes with them, so he still has the opportunity of being safe, and from the next turn start buffing them with a luminescent blessing that he also takes. That's another warlord trait from Lucius, and that means that the unit within 9 inches that he selects gains transhuman, so they can only be wounded on 4 up, and that helps them a lot because they're toughness 6 and they have a only a 3 up save and 5 up invuln, so they're not that scary. But with transhuman and having 6 of them with 6 wounds each, it's much more reliable to live. And then again, if someone comes out to shoot them or threaten them with anything that's low range or gives you more angles, you're gonna be able to retaliate. And the idea is you'll hit them first, kill a lot, and then when they hit you back, even if they wipe the unit out, there's the entire rest of the army, planes and everything that can hit them. So I think the way I play the army is I like to go first to do the massive punch for my opponent, but it does very well going second because you literally deploy safe, and then they can move 10 inches on their own. Then they have a stratagem, so they can advance 6 inches and shoot assault weapons without penalties, which is huge. That's 16 inches move that give. It's all about angles. Like I keep repeating angles, but with proper tournament terrain, you have very little that you can see. No deployment is very easy. So if you deploy the Iron Striders on one side of the board, and then all your breachers and stuff on the other side of the board, the breachers stop your opponent in skewing away from you, and then you can just advance 16 forward and shoot. And if you cannot find any angles, you can either move back and hide and wait for your opponent to give you an opening, or you can just pick them up, redeploy them somewhere, and shoot. And then that allows you to kind of bait your opponent out, because if you do that and you shoot something, then you are possibly in a charge range. So your opponent will come out and charge you, kill 3 or 4 of them, and then you can fall back, and your entire army shoots whatever came out. And the idea is, yes, you are trading your probably the strongest firepower in your army, but if your opponent is wasting time going into one side of the board that you want him to go, all your little units can advance across the board. You can start doing scramblers. The riders can run up, screen the front line, and then when they get charged, they can move 12 inches back. There's a lot of tricks. And then on top of that, if you come out and give your opponent targets, you have a Dune Rider with 8 priests. Well, 8 priests in that list, because that's all I could fit. But I would take as many as I can every time you've got spare points. Because Corpus Cari priests, they have 3 shots each with 12-inch range, and their strength 5 -1 damage. But most importantly, on 6s to hit, they score 2 additional hits, which is huge for chaff clearing, and even stronger units will buckle just with the amount of saves going in. So you just advance your transport to the middle, you move your Iron Striders to the side, and your breachers advance with the core of your army so they cannot get charged and tagged. And then your opponent can either respond with shooting you, but I doubt they'll have more firepower than you. So you will lose 1 unit, few models here and there, and then you shoot back, and everything that shot you is probably dead. I've played with this list, and I was surprised how much it kills. It seems like I always trade up. I'll kill 2 units, losing 1. And if my opponent doesn't have a huge threat like Drukhari, which is melee threat, I have loads of time to just clear out the closest units coming to me. With Drukhari, it's a bit trickier because they're really fast, but you can open a lot of raiders. If there is a scarce terrain on the table, you can open 4 raiders, maybe 5 if you're lucky, but I would say 4 raiders can be opened quite handily, because you also have got your planes. And the great thing about Fusillade, for example, which drops mortal wounds, is when he flies over a vehicle or a monster, he doesn't just roll 1 die. He rolls 6 dice, and on 4 ups it does mortal wounds. So if Raider has 10 wounds and you get 4 mortal wounds through, then getting 6 damage with autocannons, which I have in this case, is much easier than getting 10 through, because it's only a 5-up invuln. You're wounding on 3s, you're hitting on 2s, and it's probably worth mentioning why you're hitting on 2s. Iron Striders are they have Doctrine Imperative keyword, so they can gain the Doctrine, and one of the Doctrines gives you a +1 ballistic skill and -1 weapon skill, and since they don't use weapon skill really, you can move them out and be hitting on 2s. And that's army-wide, that's for everyone with Doctrine Imperative. It will affect your planes, it will affect everything with Doctrine Imperative keyword. And it's a great turn 1, turn 2 strat, because you don't really want to fight in combat other than priests, but priests don't have Doctrine Imperative keyword. They have Canticles of Omnissiah, so it doesn't affect them. So you'll be hitting on 2s into your opponent, wounding on 3s. If you have if you have a marshal or something, you can also reroll stuff. But even without the rerolls, on average, you're opening a raider with 3 of them. So having 6, you open 2 raiders with just Iron Striders, then you open the third one with your plane. And if that so happens that your opponent cannot hide another raider from breachers and destroyers, you're gonna open another one. And once they lose the raiders or whatever vehicles they have, turn 1 or turn 2, that's huge, because people trying to advance the board against this army will really struggle. The priest will be sitting in the transport somewhere in the middle, and as soon as they have an opportunity, they're gonna jump out, shoot, and probably kill a unit and then charge another unit, because their exploding 6s also work in combat. They only got weapon skill 4, but that's plenty enough. They have a stratagem, so they can automatically wound on 6s to hit in combat. It's 3 CPs, but it's very useful because the strength 5 is not great against some armies, but if you just with the sheer amount of hits that you're generating, you're gonna do some damage, and you're gonna tag stuff, you can wrap stuff, and just play the mission. It's all about bugging your opponent down. You shoot them, and you try to slow down the units that will be troublemakers for you, and then you're gonna send out your little ranger units that are OPSEC and play the mission, and and that's the general idea of how the army tries to deal with stuff. It has loads of options, and secondary wise, they're also not too shabby, because I do scramblers pretty much automatically, because Lucius has a stratagem for 1 CP that can put someone in teleportarium, so it's very hard to block them off the edges of deployment when they come on strategic reserves. But the deep strike with 5 small 25 mil bases are it's very easy to do, because with the firepower you have, you just have to shift your army slightly, and that creates a pocket that your opponent cannot be in, and then you just deploy there and scramble, and that's the idea. So the scrambler is it's very easy and it's very reliable. Then when from the generic secondaries, scramblers are easy. Engage on all fronts with all the horses and little units skirting around is also very easy, because if your opponent comes out, yes, they're easy to kill. The horses have 5-up invul and 2 wounds, so they're not that bad. But in general, if your opponent wants to kill them, they have to come out and get an angle and shoot them. But that means you're gonna kill them back. And with having 4 units of rangers and 3 units of horses, and then your characters moving up and your priest with the transport, you're always gonna have some models to do engage on all fronts. And if your opponent tries to trade back, you're always gonna uptrade and you're gonna end up tabling him. So I think it's a safe bet. Following the same logic, I really like domination, because yes, if once you lose 4 units of rangers, you lose your OPSEC. But if your opponent wants to come out and take you off the domination objective, like take your horses off, he cannot charge them because they can run back. He cannot really shoot them because they're probably gonna hide from line of sight. And if they come out to shoot them again, you shoot them back. It's all about the firepower that you have in the back. That's very safe and tough. I also like the AdMech specific eradication of flesh, because while building your list, you can put some vehicles in, and as long as one of them is alive at the end of the battle round, and you've killed more infantry units that you lost vehicle units, you're getting 3 points, and that's huge. If you have 1 Iron Strider left, or your transport hidden, it's probably not gonna die. It's not something your opponent wants to target, or you can even put like an extra vehicle in there somewhere. because people in this list specifically, they're going to be targeting planes because they're very, very painful flying around, and targeting characters, dropping mortal wounds. They have to be dealt with. With -1 damage, they're actually pretty survivable. So before your opponent deals with them, you're going to do a lot of damage to their infantry. So you're probably going to easily, every time, score 9 points. And once you get to 12, it's already worth it. Because I feel like it's very reliable. You always play different. You can get the priests out, advance them, hide them, and then move your transport back. And no one's gonna run past your entire army just to kill a vehicle because it's too scary, unless they're maybe Drukhari. But even they'll lose a valuable unit because that little vehicle is toughness 7, 3+ save. Toughness. I think it's toughness 6. 12 wounds and 3 up save. So it's pretty good. He's just gonna stay in the back. He can be fixed by all my characters because they're engine seers. And if I want to, if I don't have anything better to take, like a mission secondary, I would probably take Eradication of Flesh. I pretty much will always take Scramblers because it's just so reliable. And my worst case scenario is engage on all fronts or domination, but that worst case scenario is still very good the way I play. There are some that are kind of in the middle ground, depends on your opponent. You can do grind them down even though you've got loads of little units, because those little units can be hidden, and whenever someone kills those little units, even if they kill 3 of them, that army can easily kill way more, because you've got your Fusillade that flies over with mortal wounds and has 4 heavy stabbers, that's 16 shots, and then you've got your Strat Raptor that has 2 Phosphor Blasters and 2 Cognis Las Cannons and 2 heavy stabbers, and they can fly around and target little chaff units very easily. So grind them down depending on your opponent is not that bad. It's the same with Finder ranks. I have quite a few shots, but the priests can come out and just annihilate blobs of infantry. If they go into Orc box with strength 5 -1, as long as one of them is not under if they are not under the Big Mech because they jumped, that's huge. They just wipe a unit, I'm pretty sure. The ones that I wouldn't really take is the other Adeptus Mechanicus specific, which is Accretion of Knowledge, which is killing a model that has a Warlord trait or a relic or wound characteristic, vehicle wound characteristics of 14, because I feel like it's really tricky. I'm always not a fan of assassinate and stuff because your opponent can play very well around it. They know what you're going for, so they will just not risk those units. And it's the same with Uncharted sequencing, where you select objectives on the board and you select it hidden from your opponent, and then you assign them to a battle round, and whenever you score them, you get points. They're easy for the first 2, 3. But then the next time your opponent knows exactly, okay, so he's done that, that, and that. Now I just go there and stop him. So they force you to get like 9 points. I'm not a big fan of that because I think you just got better options with the generic ones. And then the last one is Hidden Archaeovault, and I really don't like that one because that's where your opponent selects one. And every time you control it at the end of the battle round, you gain 2 points. And then if you collect it in the control at the end of the battle, you get 5 points. So in order to get it 15 points, you have to hold it for the entire game, and then at the end of the battle round. And again, that's your opponent can just hide behind the terrain with like strong combat units, or just literally sit on top of it. And yes, you can clear them off, but you're gonna be playing into your opponent's pocket of threat, and I'm not a big fan of it. So I think the best way to do it is you play your own game. So you go, oh, okay, I'm going to be killing you anyway, so I'm just going to kill more infantry that you kill vehicles, which is very easy to do. And then I'll do my scramblers, which you cannot really affect because I will clear whichever quarter of the table I want to do it in. And then I will just do engage on the fronts because my units are everywhere anyway. Or I will get domination because come out and get me out of the domination objectives and I will kill you there. And that's basically the general idea of the army. They can do whatever they want. You can build them to do whatever you want. This is a perfect mix of everything, I feel like, because I've got little chaff units playing the mission. I've got really hard-hitting units in the back, and I even got a little bit of combat threat because Cole is a beast in combat. But the thing is, no one really gets in combat with you, because if someone's already in combat, you will bog them down, you will fall back, desperate breakout, or you can even use your Solar Flare to save a unit from combat that's wrapped for cheap. and then just shoot into them. And your opponent trying to trade 1-for-1 will pretty much always lose. So yeah, that's how the army works.
Right, so David just ran you through why this list is so good. Now I'm going to run you through how we're going to look at tackling it. The first thing that popped out to me when I was looking at David's list is the majority of stuff he's got is all either 1 damage or 2 damage. The only thing he's got a higher damage than that is the Stratoraptor, the lascans on the Stratoraptor, and they are nasty. But the Plasma Culverins are flat 2 damage, and the Iron Strider Ballistari are flat 2 damage as well. So the first thing that popped out to me on how to deal with this is bring any -1 damage mechanic available to your army. Now, this is thing like Death Guard. Death Guard have -1 damage naturally across the whole army. I think they would give this army a good run for its money just because they reduce the damage capacity of it by so much. But then also, there are other things in the game that do similar things like Deathwing. If you take Deathwing, you can take the Ancient with the Deathwing with his relic, and he can choose a unit and they reduce damage by 1 as well. There is also the Cohort. Now, I know we're talking about AdMech here, but there is also the AdMech Cohort where they reduce damage by 1. So, it'd be a little bit tough in the AdMech off if you did have those robots in the Cohort and they were reducing damage by 1. Also, Talos, if you take Talos with the -1 damage, this kind of army is going to struggle. If you can put anything into your army that's, and of course, it's, you're talking about a little bit about tailoring here, but AdMech, you need to expect these to be on top tables at tournaments. So if they are, then what you want to do is you want to put something in your army that can give AdMech a good game. Not change a complete army, but just put something in your army that can give them a game, and that's going to really help you out in competitive games, especially at tournaments. So, yeah, something with the -1 damage mechanic would be really useful against this army. After that, decent anti-tank firepower, especially 3 damage. That's very important. These Iron Strider Ballistari are super good at doing their damage. You want to get rid of them as soon as possible, and also these planes that are flying around. Now, the reason why I say especially 3 damage is because 3 damage would destroy the breaches and the Cataphront destroyers quite reliably, but then also the Iron Strider Ballistari have got 6 wounds each as well, so 3 damage would 2 of them would be killing each one of them, which is really nice. So that's like the key number. But you also want to bring some big shots because both of David's planes have got chaff launchers on them, so they're -1 damage. And I'm assuming that most AdMech players that take planes will be taking chaff launchers on their planes, so they'll all reduce damage by 1. So what you really want to do is you want to put something in your army that's like, I don't know, D6 or D3 plus 3 damage, and then when it's reduced by 1, it's still doing decent amounts to the vehicles in the army. The other thing is you want some multi-shot units in your army, some units that can put out like 25, 30 shots quite reliably, hitting on 2s or 3s or something like that, with a strength of 3 or 4 or better, because there is a lot of chaff in this army. There are 4 units of Rangers, there's a unit of the Infiltrators, there's the Raiders, 3 units of Raiders, and there's also a unit of 8 Corpuscari Priests. But all of these units that I've just mentioned there are toughness 3, either toughness 3 or toughness 4. But picking those up is not very hard. They've all got 1 wound each. They all have a 4-up, 5-up save. The priests have got an invulnerable and a 5-up feel no pain. But they're all 1 wound each, and they're all pretty much toughness 3. So if you have something that's got 25 to 30 strength, 4 shots or something like that, you're going to start mowing them down, and it reduces the ability of this army to be able to play the mission. So that's another way of tackling it. The final thing I want to talk about is bringing a list that doesn't rely on your opponent for secondaries. That's very important here. You need to think about, and I say this quite a lot, but I think it's becoming more and more prevalent now. You need to think about when you're building your list, secondaries that your list can do without relying on what your opponent brings. So you want to look at things like raise the banners, deploy scramblers, engage in all fronts, domination, while we stand we fight. You want to look at those kind of secondaries and try to incorporate as many of them as you can into your list, because of course this list doesn't give any away. There's like 3 characters, so Assassinate's not a particularly great one, because those characters, as David explained to you, they're in there to buff everything around them, so they're going to be in bubbles hidden. So unless you basically table this army, you're not going to kill the characters, so Assassinate would be terrible against this. Bring it down. Bring it down could be quite nice, But if you kill every single vehicle in David's army here, you're going to get 10 points. Because the boat here, the Dune Rider, is the only thing that gives away 2 points. Even the planes are only 10 wounds, they give away 1 point each. And all of the Ballistari only give away 1 point each. So it's going to be very hard to kill them. And if you kill all of his vehicles, which is the majority of the punch in his army, if you manage to do that, then you get 10 points, which is fair play. But I think there are better things you can take out there, and they're easier lots of 10 points or more. Easier lots of 10 points plus that you can get in other ways rather than take and bring it down. So that's how I would tackle this list. Let's have a look at a couple of modifications we could do to make this list even better than it already is. So some modifications. Let's have a look what we can do to this list. First of all, I think the biggest thing is adding 5 more Iron Strider Ballistari with las cannons. Now, David's got 6 here with the autocannon, and I think they're really good. Personally, I prefer the autocannons just because of the volume of the shots. I really like the unit of 6 with the autocannons in them. But some las cannons would really help you deal with bigger threats, like, say, Mortarion, Death Guard, these things that we were talking about that could counter the current list because of the damage in it. Now, what I would personally do is I would drop 1 Iron Strider Ballistari from this autocannon squad. So you've got 5. Now, this is for 1, to save some points, but 2, so that you can have a 5-man unit and you can chain along the board and coherency doesn't become an issue anymore. So personally, I would have a 5-man unit of them. And then I think I would be switching out the plasma destroyers to get those las cannon Ballistari in there. So you've dropped 1 autocannon Ballistari and you've dropped your plasma destroyers to put a second unit of 5 Ballistari in there, but with the las cannons. Just because I think the plasma cannons and the autocannons are kind of doing a similar job. So you want 2 different units doing 2 different jobs in this army, I think. And the reason why I would not switch the Iron Strider Ballistari for them and I would switch the breaches instead is because the Ballistari are more reliable because they automatically get 6 shots each. And on top of that, they're a lot quicker than the breaches and the destroyers. So that's why I would switch it that way around. And that would just give you that punch to go through vehicles that I think this list needs. After that, I would add some Teraxi Sterilizers with the Flamers for shenanigans. So I would drop maybe the Infiltrators at this point, and I would drop some of the troops because there's a lot of troops in this army to get 1 or 2 units, just a 5 of these Teraxi Sterilizers, or 1 big unit of 10, because there's a stratagem in the book where at the end of your turn, you can pick up a unit from the board and they come back on in your next turn. Now that's bonkers because that means you can deep strike in, you can shoot, and then at the end of the turn, you can pick that unit back up. Then the next turn you come in, you shoot, and at the end of the turn, you can pick that unit back up. So you have a unit of 10 Teraxi Sterilizers here that just drop in with Flamers every single turn, and then they leave before your turn. So you have no way of killing them at all. You never get to hit them, which is absolutely bonkers. But it's a super interesting tool. So I would recommend definitely using that. The final thing is I would add more Corpuscari Electro Priests to teleport in. So, you've got this transport. You've got this transport with some Corpuscari Priests in there. I would personally take another unit of Corpuscari Priests and I would teleport them in. I don't think the list needs 3 units of Raiders. I think 2 units of Horseman Raiders are good. So I would drop 1 Raider unit. And at that point, I would drop the Breachers. I don't really like the unit of 3 Breachers. I don't think they do that much. And I think dropping a unit of 3 Horsemen and a unit of 3 Breachers for another unit of 10 Corpuscari Priests that you can teleport in because they're Lucius. You make them Lucius, put them in that detachment so they can teleport in with the Teleportarium. I think that's going to do a lot more damage than what it's currently doing. So imagine that. You've taken some Raiders out, some Breachers out, some Cataphron Destroyers with Plasmas out, and a few troops out. And instead, you've gained a whole nother unit of Ballistari, a unit of 10 Teraxi Sterilizers, and a unit of 9 more or 10 more Electro Priests, which I think is just way better bang for your buck. So that is the end of it. Those are the modifications that I would do, and I think that would make the list significantly better. I think David's list here is really cool, but I just think with some tweaking, it could be better. And if you would like your list reviewed here, then please use the link below and submit your list. And until next week, everyone, I'll see you later.